Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that I've put a lot of thought into in the last few months, something I've observed as a coach and everything else is that if people are not setting specific time frames of, hey, I really need to be making maximum muscle growth for this whole year, or I need to be focused on getting ripped for this phase to reach a certain body weight, I don't think strict bulking and cutting is necessary. Now, does that mean your diet shouldn't be strict? Okay, no, I think it should. And here's kind of a point I'm going to make. For people who just want general body composition, who don't mind the fact that maybe in phases, look, lifts are going to stall more because you're gaining muscle slowly or because you're leaning out some, but you're just trying to generally make general upward progress and to always either be gaining muscle or getting leaner, I don't think that we need dedicated bulks and cuts. And what I want to be clear here is that as long as we are eating very large amounts of protein, you're regulating your diet enough to where you aren't gaining body fat. Okay? In other words, you're following some sort of strict structured manner, whether it's a fasting protocol or really low fat or really low carb. You're doing something that's structured that will control appetite and fat gain, and you are again training hard and protein overfeeding. Protein overfeeding, I don't even mean like what I'm always saying with the really high, but you better be exceeding 1 gram per pound of body weight. Okay, if you are doing that, I think it's okay to not necessarily focus on bulking or cutting. However, when you do that, you also have to accept that, hey, I shouldn't expect some linear progress of any type in my lifts, right? Because if you're not tracking specifically the bulking or cutting, you may just be easing into a deficit. You may be losing a little more body fat and might not be gaining muscle for a little while, okay? And that's okay. Because if you're just chasing improved body composition and you're trying to stay, at a leaner body fat all the time, I think that's perfectly viable. I think it's perfectly viable. And I think we can be a lot more loose with that. Okay. What I have a problem with is is again, particularly some younger lifters who are like, well, I'm struggling to make gains at all. Well, you've got to be eating enough. Okay. But those are also ones who are like, they need to feel like they're making progress on the weights every month. Well, yeah, that's a little different. But what if you're just content with having a general upward trend, just good programming, and as long as there's an upward trend and you know that every year, or at least every phase, you're either gaining muscle or losing fat, again, I don't think you need to strictly track it. Right? I don't think you need to track it. You can probably more or less stay at a similar body weight. Now, again, the point being, if you're 160 pounds and you want to get markedly bigger, you're going to need to probably bump calories to gain weight. If you're 200 pounds and you're 20% body fat, or 220 and 20 or 25% body fat, and you want to be leaner, yeah, you may need to do some cutting phases. But if you are not looking at, hey, I really have to gain a lot this year of muscle, or I really have to lose a bunch of body fat, I don't think you need to strictly track it. Here's the caveat, if the protein is kept really high. Why? Because that will always keep you in a position to where you're probably going to be either losing fat or gaining muscle. Okay? Irrespective of what you're tracking. And I think for people who are a little more just somewhat physique oriented, people who aren't trying to actively go up a weight class or down a weight class in a sport, I think we can get away with that. Because here's the other thing. People will say, well, the gains might be a little slower. Sure. But is this a lifestyle? And I think that's the point. When you're living it as a lifestyle, you can accept that. You can live with that. All right? But the other thing is the end result going to be slower? No. No, not really, because you're always going to be either getting leaner or gaining muscle. As long as you are training hard on good programming and pushing towards progressive overload, and you're keeping the diet tight and the protein really high, you're always going to be moving forward. I've told people we should always either be gaining muscle or losing fat, and that's something I've said. But if you're doing that, isn't that going to happen? Even if you're not actively tracking your deficit or your surplus, if those other factors are in place, your fatigue management's good, programming's good, protein's really high, some control to your diet, you're always going to be doing one or the other. Okay? People are only really spinning their wheels when they're neglecting something like that. It's usually, well, I haven't been eating enough protein, or my training has been, I haven't really been putting the effort in consistently. That's when you're spinning your wheels. Or they're doing really dumb stuff with their training. They're training way too easy, or they're doing excessive amounts of volume without fatigue management in their life. That's when people are spinning their wheels. Okay, that's when they're spinning their wheels. But I think on that from the diet end, because you're always making progress in one of those endeavors, as long as you are doing those other things, I think people can get away with it. And I know that sounds very non-dogmatic compared to stuff I've said oftentimes. But there's truth to it. There's truth to it. And people who do that, and they do it for a prolonged period of time, they're probably always going to have a good physique. And again, the caveat being, unless you need to see a dramatic change in one direction or the other in a short period of time, I don't think you need to do one or the other. I don't think that you have to. I don't think that it's strictly necessary to make continual progress. Again, the point being, only when you say, hey, it's really important for me to maximize my growth this year, well, you're going to need a surplus. And I remember my bro Viata saying that in a post a while back, as a guy who stays jacked and lean year-round for a couple decades. He said, look, I don't think that people need to be worried about that. You can make purely lean gains as long as you're just like, I eat right at maintenance and maybe try to gain a very, very, very small amount of weight every year. Well, if you do that, you're going to stay at pretty similar body composition and just make lean gains. The argument would be, will it be as fast as if you bulk? No. But you also aren't going to have to worry about a cut either. And he's like, it totally works. As long as there's progressive overload in your training and there's a very, very, very tiny surplus. Again, as long as you're like, I gained a couple pounds in 6 months. And you've pursued good programming with high protein, that's all going to be lean. That's going to be purely muscle growth. Right? Right, of course it is. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.